Lesson 4, Hellenistic Culture, Hellenistic Arts. During the Hellenistic era, philosophers, scientists, poets, writers moved to the new Greek cities of Southwest Asia and Egypt. Alexandria, for example, served as the Greek capital of Egypt. It was a major center of learning. Many scholars were attracted to Alexandria's library. It contained more than 500,000 scrolls. Alexandria also had a museum that attracted scholars to do research. The city's reputation as a place of learning and its location on the Mediterranean Sea contributed to Alexandria's economic growth. Today, Alexandria remains a vital city in Egypt where nearly 4 million people live and work. Buildings and statues. Greek architecture serves an important role in expanding Alexandria's empire. They planned public building projects for new cities that were being founded for old cities that were being rebuilt. Hellenistic kings wanted to make these cities like Athens and other cultural centers in Greece. They were willing to spend large amounts of money to do so. These kings wanted to line the streets with Greek temples and theaters and baths. Hellenistic kings and other wealthy citizens hired Greek sculptors who created thousands of statues for towns and cities. Hellenistic sculptors proved as talented as the sculptors of Greece's golden age. These sculptors, however, developed new styles. They did not carve ideal figures to reflect beauty and harmony. Instead, they showed people in more realistic style. They even created statues that looked angry or sad. Hellenistic writers. Hellenistic rulers also supported talented writers. As a result, poets and writers produced a large amount of literature during the Hellenistic era. Very little of these writings has survived today. One work that we do know about is an epic poem called the Argonautica, written by Apollonius of Rhodes. The poem tells the story of Jason and his band of heroes. You may have read or seen a modern version of this poem called Jason and the Argonauts. Jason and his band sail the sea seeking a ram with a golden fleece. Along the way, they have many adventures. Another poet named Theocritus wrote short poems about the beauty of nature. Athens remains a center for Greek theater. These writers of plays and produce comedies and not tragedies. These comedies are known as Greek New Comedy. However, the comedies of the Hellenistic era were not like the comedies of the Greek Golden Age. Those of the Hellenistic era did not poke fun at political leaders. Instead, the plays told stories about love and relationship of ordinary people. One of the best known of these playwrights was Menander. He lived from 343 BC to 291 BC and is considered to be the most important poet of Greek New Comedy. The temple of Apollo at Delphi had an inscription that read, "Know thyself." Making a humorous comment on that inscription, Menander said, "This know yourself" is a silly proverb in some ways. To know the man next door is a much more useful rule. His works were later adapted by Roman writers. Through his works, Menander influenced the development of European comedy during the Renaissance and even comedy today. Thinkers and scientists. During the Hellenistic era, Athens continued to support Greek philosophers. These philosophers tried to answer questions such as, what is a good life? Or how can people find peace of mind in a troubled world? The two most important Hellenistic philosophers were Epicurus and Zeno. Epicurus founded a philosophy known as Epicureanism. He taught his students that finding happiness was the goal of life. He believed that the way to be happy was to avoid pain. Today, the word Epicurean means the love of physical pleasure, such as good food or comfortable surroundings. For Epicurus, however, pleasure meant spending time with friends. This meant learning not to be upset about the problems in life. Epicureans avoided worry. They limited their wants and lived simply. The Stoics. The Phoenician thinker named Zeno developed a philosophy called Stoicism. Zeno did not have the money to rent a lecture hall in which to teach. Instead, he taught at a building called the Painted Porch. The Greek word for porch was stoa. The term Stoicism thus comes from the Greek word stoa. The Stoics claimed that people who were guided by their emotions lived unhappy lives. They believed that happiness resulted from using reason. Sound thinking, they thought, should guide decisions. Today, the word stoic is referred to describe someone who seems not affected by joy or sadness. Unlike Epicureans, Stoics thought people had a duty to serve their community. The ideas of Stoics would later influence Roman thinkers. Science and mathematics. Science also flourished during the Hellenistic era. Even though Hellenistic scientists used simple instruments, they performed many experiments and developed new theories. Aristarchus claimed that the sun was the center of the universe. He said that the earth circled the sun, and at the time, other astronomers rejected his ideas. They thought that the earth was the center of the universe. Euclid taught others his theories about geometry. If you study geometry today, you will learn about the same topics studied by the ancient Greeks. Another scientist, Eratosthenes, was the Greek librarian at the Library of Alexandria. After study and research, Eratosthenes concluded that the earth was round. Then he used his knowledge to measure the earth's circumference, the distance around the earth. In order to measure the earth's circumference, Eratosthenes put two sticks in the ground far apart from each other. When the sun was directly over one stick, he measured its shadow. By measuring the shadows, he was able to calculate the curve of the earth's surface. Using his measurements, Eratosthenes tried to figure the distance around the earth. Remarkably, his estimate was within 185 miles of the actual distance. Using similar methods, he tried to determine how far it was to the sun and to the moon. Although his measurements were not accurate, he concluded that the sun was much larger than the earth and the moon. Euclid and Alexander advanced the fields of mathematics. His best-known book, Elements, describes plane geometry. Plane geometry is one branch of mathematics. It shows how points, lines, angles, and surfaces relate to one another. Around 300 BC, Egypt's king Ptolemy asked Euclid if he knew a faster way to learn geometry. Euclid answered that there is no royal way to learn geometry. In other words, if the king wanted to understand Euclid's ideas, he would have to study. Euclid's theory still influence mathematics today. The most famous scientist of the Hellenistic period was Archimedes. Archimedes worked on solid geometry. He studied ball-like shapes called spheres and tube-like shapes called cylinders. He also figured out the value of pi. The number is used to measure the area of circles. It is represented by the Greek symbol pi. Archimedes was also an inventor. He developed machinery and weapons of war. Archimedes was known as a modest man. According to one story, however, he boasted, "Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I will move the earth." The king of Syracuse heard of Archimedes' boast, and he asked Archimedes to build a machine to defend the city. So Archimedes designed catapults. These machines could throw rocks and arrows and spears over long distances. When the Romans attacked Syracuse in 2012 BC, the catapults drove them back. It took the Romans 3 years to capture the city. During the massacre that followed, Archimedes was killed. Hellenistic thought and culture had long-lasting effects. The mathematician Hypatia lived in Alexander in Egypt around AD 400, more than 700 years after the Hellenistic era. He kept up the Greek tradition of studying philosophy and mathematics. Like the great Greek thinkers of the past, Hypatia also championed the use of reason over superstition. The four kingdoms that formed from Alexander's empire shared Hellenistic culture. Despite their common culture, the kingdoms were unable to work together and they fought wars with one another. Macedonia held power over Greece for a long time. It could not keep the Greek city-states permanently under control, though. Sparta and some other city-states regained their independence. These city-states had Hellenistic cultures but did not have strong armies. They remained free for only a short time. Rome was a city-state in central Italy. In late 200 BC, Rome conquered the entire Italian peninsula. Greece lost its lands in southern Italy, and the Greeks now feared that Rome would take control of Greece. Greeks tried to stop Rome's growing power, but failed. They began supporting Roman armies in various wars. The Romans won these conflicts, however. Gradually, Rome gained control of the Greek mainland.